the undeclared military alliance between Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. Various activities in the recent past and presently only seem to suggest that there is an informal military and security alliance between Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. It may appear that the main objective of this informal alliance is to counterbalance the military power as well as threats posed by Western alliances like NATO and AUKUS, along with other countries in Asia viewed with hostility by some members, such as Japan and South Korea. This alliance is grounded on shared political, historical, geographical, ideological, and economic circumstances and interests. The alliance has grown even stronger in the recent past in response to significant changes in the geopolitical landscape. Evidence of this can be found in various actions taken recently by members of this alliance. For instance, steps taken by Iran and North Korea to support Russia militarily in the ongoing Russia and Ukraine war. For example, both Iran and North Korea have been supplying Russia with deadly missiles and drones for use in Ukraine. North Korea, for instance, has made it very clear that it fully supports Russia in its war against Ukraine and the West. During his recent visit to Russia in the month of September last year, the leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, called the war Russia is waging in Ukraine a sacred and therefore necessary war against what he sees as Western imperialist or expansionist agenda. Hostile language and adversarial actions taken by Western countries against Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran only seem to have motivated these four nations into forging closer cooperation that has now been expanded to include commercial activities and sharing of key technology ideas for civilian and military applications. The use of hostile language aimed at demonizing Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran has increasingly become very common in Western political circles and media. For instance, it is often suggested that these four countries are a threat to the so-called international rules-based order, another way of describing a world order that mostly serve economic and political interests of the collective West. Widely used phrases in the West like containing China, decoupling from China, defeating Russia, and wiping North Korea off the map have not been taken lightly in Moscow, Beijing, Pyongyang, and Tehran. It is also well known that countries in this somehow secret alliance, namely North Korea, Iran, and Russia, have been under some of the heaviest economic and military sanctions ever imposed by the United States and its Western allies. Attempts to isolate and punish North Korea, Iran, China, and Russia has only motivated these countries to forge closer ties in nearly all spheres. Certain actions by the United States, like its increased military presence in the Korean Peninsula and its intensification of joint military drills with South Korea, are viewed by China, Russia, and North Korea as hostile actions. For many years now, politicians and leaders in the West have also explicitly threatened Iran with military action. Among their stated goals is taking out key Iranian military installations or strategic assets like nuclear power plants and oil refineries. Israel and the United States, for instance, have in the past explicitly voiced plans to destroy Iranian nuclear facilities. China also feels threatened by numerous war drills that the US has been conducting with allies like Japan, Australia, and South Korea in the Asia-Pacific region. These Navy drills are usually carried out in preparation for potential major wars. For instance, possible future wars between the US and China, or war between the United States and North Korea. Just to reiterate, close military and security cooperation between Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea in recent years has increased as a result of ongoing conflicts and simmering tensions in the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and Asia-Pacific region. Some of these tensions and conflicts can be blamed on current foreign policy practices of the United States and its allies, as well as unresolved historical disputes. Like was mentioned earlier, this unofficial military and security alliance between China, Russia, North Korea is rooted in shared economic, political, ideological interests in addition to geographical and historical circumstances. It should be pointed out, however, that during certain periods in the past, security and economic interests of China, Russia, North Korea and Iran have collided and even slightly dented relationships. For instance, Russia has in the past sided with Western nations in voting for sanctions that were then imposed on both Iran and North Korea targeted at their ballistic missiles programs. Currently, however, there is an alignment of interests based on shared circumstances faced by these four nations as dictated by changes in the geopolitical environment. For instance, all these four nations have been under some form of sanctions or restrictions imposed on them by the West. It is well known that Russia in the Soviet era shared the ideology of communism with both China and North Korea. It is also worth mentioning that Russia, China, and North Korea have historically been seen as three interdependent communist red states with shared values and shared borders. These three nations have sometimes taken collective actions in the past to defend their own territories against what they see as Western and Japanese expansionism. For instance, both China and Russia have had unresolved territorial disputes with Japan that have existed for decades now. North Korea also has ongoing territorial dispute with South Korea. In Europe, Russia currently has territorial dispute with Ukraine. Russia, China, and North Korea in recent years have developed closer military and security cooperation, yet it should also be considered that this closeness has historical roots. For instance, the Soviet Union, the predecessor to modern-day Russia, trained and armed North Korean fighters led by Kim Il-sung, the founding father of North Korea, during their war for independence from Japanese rule. Upon taking power in North Korea, Kim Il-sung shaped the governance structures of North Korea in accordance with the communist ideology that existed in the Soviet Union and Communist China under Chairman Mao. It can therefore be argued that the United States-led war on communism, for instance, its war in Vietnam and Korea, was viewed as direct threat to the national security of both the Soviet Union and China. War on communism coincided with the Cold War that can be described as a period of geopolitical tension between the United States and the Soviet Union and their respective allies, the Western Bloc and the Eastern Bloc, that started in 1947 after the end of World War II and lasted to 1991. Another reason why China and Russia view North Korea as an important ally is because both nations see North Korea as an important buffer state that separates them from South Korea, where United States military bases are located. This makes any possible surprise attacks against Russia or China staged from South Korea by the United States and its allies very hard to execute. The relationship between Russia and China has been very strong since the Soviet era, except for a few years between late 1950s and early 1960s when Russia and China had major differences. The ties between Russia and China have not only been based on economic interests such as cross-border trade between Russia and China, but also military and security interests as well as shared ideology in the Soviet era, given that China and the Soviet Union were both authoritarian communist states. It has been observed that the assistance provided by Russia in the past has helped China become a major global military power that it is today. For instance, China was able to make its first atom bomb in the 1960s during the Soviet era with the help of Russia. Russia played a crucial role in making China a global military power through exports of advanced weapons to China and through technical support it provided to China. Most of the technology that was employed in the development of domestic Chinese arms industries came from Russia. It is often erroneously or falsely claimed in the Western media and written reports that Russia is a junior partner to China, when in reality, Russia in the Soviet era and in the post-Soviet era played a crucial role in transforming China through technical assistance it provided to China, as well as through various exports of industrial machinery to China that became the foundation of a thriving Chinese industrial sector. For instance, the first Chinese aircraft carrier, named Liaoning, was actually a refurbished and retrofitted Soviet-era aircraft carrier that was originally built as a heavy aircraft carrying cruiser for the Soviet Navy. The ship was laid down as the Riga and renamed the Varyag in 1990. A large number of Chinese fighter jets that have been deployed by the Chinese Air Force are copies of Russia-supplied fighter jets. some of the Russian fighter jets that were exported to China were reverse-engineered in China to make Chinese variants. For instance, Beijing went on to create its own Shenyang J-11 fighter jet and HQ-9 surface-to-air missiles based on Russian designs. The Chinese Shenyang J-11 is derived from the Russian Su-27. When it comes to economic ties, China has become the biggest trading partner of Russia. Goods and services worth billions of dollars have been exchanged between Russia and China, especially since 2022, when Russia came under very heavy sanctions that were imposed on it by the US and its European allies. For instance, the value of goods that were exchanged between Russia and China in the year 2023 was more than $200 billion. China and Russia have doubled down on their no-limits partnership recently, with leaders from both countries vowing to maintain close personal interaction. For instance, during a phone call between the President of Russia and the President of China this year, Chinese President Xi Jinping and Putin celebrated the deepened bilateral engagement and cooperation between China and Russia in various sectors and criticized what they called US interference in other countries' affairs. China's exports to other members of the unofficial alliance like Iran have also experienced rapid growth in the last 5 years, with China replacing Japan as the world's second-largest exporter to Iran. Iran's imports from China rose by 360% between 2000 and 2005. China is now responsible for about 9.5% of all Iranian imports. Commercial activities between Iran and Russia have also increased in recent months following the imposition of sanctions on Russia by Western powers after Russia invaded Ukraine. For instance, Iran's ambassador to Russia recently mentioned that Iran has exported goods worth $2 billion between the years 2023 and 2024. Furthermore, members of the Russian-led Eurasian Economic Union (EU) have also signed a fully-fledged free trade agreement with Iran, as reported by Russia's Economy Ministry in February 2024. Many media reports in recent months have suggested that Iran and Russia are increasingly becoming close military allies. For instance, Iran has been accused of aiding Russia in Ukraine by supplying it with deadly military drones and missiles. It is, however, worth clarifying that close military cooperation between Russia and Iran existed even before the war in Ukraine started. For instance, Russia has supplied Iran with advanced weapons in the past, including S-300 anti-air missiles that were delivered to Iran in 2016, despite opposition from Israel and the US. As mentioned earlier, it has been reported widely that since 2023, Iran has also been supplying Russia with drones that Russia has used to carry out attacks in Ukraine, a development that can be seen as a sign of deepening military cooperation. Iran has in the past allowed the Russian military to make use of its air force bases. For instance, the airbase of Hamadan that in 2016 became a launch platform for Russian long-range bombers tasked with striking ISIS and other anti-Assad Islamic militants' targets in Syria. The Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed that strikes by Tupolev 22M3 long-range bombers and Sukhoi 34 fighter bombers were launched from Iran's Hamadan air base. This and other gestures have clearly demonstrated a high level of mutual trust and friendship between Russia and Iran. It is also well known that since 2015, Russia and Iran have fought together in Syria against Islamic rebels that were trying to topple President Bashar al-Assad of Syria, an ally of both Iran and Russia. In November of 2023, it was reported by Reuters that Iran and Russia had finalized arrangements for the delivery of Russian-made Sukhoi Su-35 fighter jets and helicopters, Iran's deputy defense minister told Iran's Tasnim news agency, as Tehran and Moscow forge closer military relations. Iran's deputy defense minister Mehdi Farahi told reporters that Iran and Russia have agreed on delivery plans for Sukhoi Su-35 fighter jets, Mi-28 attack helicopters, and Yak-130 jet trainers to join the combat units of Iran's army, Iran's deputy defense minister Mehdi Farahi said. In 2023, Russia Minister of Defense General Sergei Shoigu visited both North Korea and Iran to work on forging closer military cooperation between the two nations. In North Korea, General Shoigu was given full access to facilities housing advanced North Korean weapons. General Shoigu has also visited China recently, where he has held high-level meetings with top Chinese military officials. Contrary to what is officially known in the mainstream, it has been observed that Russia, North Korea, China, and Iran have secretly been sharing very sensitive military technology, for instance, sensitive tech on drones and ballistic missiles. Many reports have suggested that sensitive secrets gathered by Iran from the captured United States military stealth drone in 2011 was shared with both China and Russia. The drone that was captured by Iran is a Lockheed Martin RQ-170 Sentinel unmanned aerial vehicle, UAV. This drone was captured by Iranian forces near the city of Kashmir in northeastern Iran. It has been reported that Iran has since produced its own drones based on technical details of the captured United States RQ-170 military drone. For instance, one type of Iranian drone known as Shahid-171 Simorgh. Just this year, the Russians announced that they had deployed an advanced stealth drone S-70 Okhotnik B. Upon closer look, one may notice that this drone shares many features with the captured United States stealth drone RQ-170. The Russian stealth drone S-70 Okhotnik B, also referred to as Hunter B, is a heavy unmanned combat aerial vehicle that has been developed by Sukhoi and Russian Aircraft Corporation, Mikoyan, as a sixth-generation aircraft project. Furthermore, Iran and Russia have been working jointly to develop space satellite technologies. For instance, in February of 2024, it was reported by Reuters and other news channels that Iran had successfully put a domestically developed satellite, Pars-1, into a 500 km orbit via a Soyuz rocket launch in eastern Russia. The 134-kilogram satellite, built by the Iranian Space Research Institute, is designed for remote sensing applications and testing technologies for future satellites, said the official IRNA news agency. Hassan Salari, head of the Iranian Space Agency, ISA, said at a press conference that Pars-1 was the 12th satellite launched under the current Iranian administration. This is yet another proof that the collaboration between Iran and Russia is expanding into many spheres that include sensitive technologies. It should be stressed that this is not the only space launch that Russia has undertaken on behalf of Iran. There are many others in previous years. Just recently this year, Iran, China, and Russia have held joint naval exercises in the waters of Gulf region. These joint naval exercises can only be viewed as an indication of closer military and security cooperation between the three nations. It is quite possible that in the future, North Korea would be included in planned joint military exercises alongside China, Russia, and Iran. It is not by coincidence that the only countries in the world that have so far announced major breakthroughs in the development, testing, and deployment of hypersonic missiles are members of this informal alliance, namely, Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. It cannot be ruled out that the technical know-how used by both Iran and North Korea to develop their own hypersonic missiles came from Russia. It has been documented that Russia has in the past shared sensitive military technologies with countries it considers staunch allies. For instance, in the 1950s and early 1960s during the Soviet era, Russia shared sensitive nuclear weapons technology with China that led to the development of the first Chinese atom bomb. Just last year, during his visit to Russia, North Korean President Kim Jong-un was granted full access to sensitive Russian military and aerospace facilities. This was seen as a sign that Russia was ready to share sensitive military secrets with North Korea. Based on how Russia has rewarded its staunch allies in the past like China, it cannot be ruled out that both Iran and North Korea, staunch allies of Russia, have received help from Russia to develop high-tech weapons, for instance, their own hypersonic missiles. Another sign of deepening military ties, especially in recent years. It is not widely recognized that hypersonic missiles were first developed and deployed by Russia and China. It is also very likely that the Russians and Chinese subsequently secretly shared the technology with both North Korea and later Iran. In November of 2023, Iran announced that it had developed and successfully tested its first hypersonic missile named Fata. What has not been made clear in the media reports is how Iran acquired the technical know-how that was employed in the development of its first hypersonic missile. It is well known that hypersonic missiles are quite hard to make. It is why even the most technologically advanced countries like the United States and Israel have so far not been able to develop deployable hypersonic missiles, despite making several attempts over the years. Furthermore, it has been reported in the past, for instance, by CNN in September of 2017, that Iran and North Korea for some time have been working jointly to develop effective nuclear-capable intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, that can reach mainland United States. Media reports in the past have also suggested that data on nuclear weapons tests carried out by the North Koreans could have been shared with Iran. Historically, military cooperation between Russia and North Korea has been very close. This was made clear to the world in 2023 when North Korean Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un visited Russia in the month of September. During his visit, the North Korean leader was given full access to sensitive Russian military facilities like weapons manufacturing plants, a naval vessel and space rockets launch facility of Vostochny that is located in the far east of Russia. It should be stressed that the relationship between Russia and North Korea is a special one and runs very deep indeed. For instance, Russia in the Soviet era played major role in establishing North Korea as a nation. Russia was directly involved in North Korea even before it became a state. For instance, Russia briefly administered northern parts of Korea after the departure of the Japanese before giving it back to the Soviet-backed government of Kim Il-sung, first Supreme Leader of North Korea. Pursued by Japanese troops, in late 1940, Kim Il-sung, who became the first Supreme Leader of North Korea, and a dozen of his fighters escaped by crossing the Amur River into the Soviet Union. Kim was sent to a camp at Vyatskoye near Khabarovsk, where the Soviets retrained the Korean Communist guerrillas led by Kim Il-sung. While his father, North Korea's founding leader Kim Il-sung, was still living in exile in Russia, Kim Jong-il, the country's second Supreme Leader, was born there in 1941 under the name Yuri Arsenovich Kim. Kim Jong-il is the father of Kim Jong-un, current Supreme Leader of North Korea. Kim Jong-il became the second Supreme Leader of North Korea after the death of his father in 1994. It could even be argued that Kim Jong-il, second Supreme Leader of North Korea, is in fact a citizen of Russia, yet according to official North Korean propaganda, it has been alleged that he was born on Mount Pektu, that is considered sacred by both North and South Korea. Russia in the Soviet era also gave assistance to North Korea during the Korean War of the early 1950s, but unlike China, its participation was indirect. Even though the Soviets did not send soldiers to fight in the war, Russia gave support to North Korea by supplying it with weapons and other forms of support in their war against South Korea, the United States and their other allies. It has been argued that the real reason why Russia in the Soviet era did not participate directly in the Korean War is because Russia did not want to weaken its western flank by committing troops to fight alongside North Korea and China against the United States and its allies. During the Cold War in the 1950s, the Soviets were more focused on consolidating their presence in Eastern Europe. It has been observed that Russia has continued to covertly support North Korea militarily by providing it with key technologies that have been used in the development of advanced weapons. Like China, most of North Korean weapons are based on Soviet-era Russian designs. A number of experts have shared the view that both Russia and China view North Korea as a buffer state or a shield against any potential threats posed by the United States, which has permanent military bases in South Korea. Indeed, both Russia and China consider North Korea as an important strategic partner when it comes to their own security. It is why both Russia and China wants a very powerful North Korea because this serves their security interests. It can be argued that Russia and China do not consider nuclear-armed North Korea as a threat to their national security. A militarily strong North Korea can therefore be seen as serving the security interests of both Russia and China. In the Middle East, security and economic interests of China, Russia and Iran are also viewed as perfectly aligned. For instance, both Russia and Iran are staunch allies of President Bashar al-Assad of Syria, where Russia now has air force and naval bases. In recent years, especially since 2020 during the global pandemic, North Korea was able to make quick progress in creating and testing several advanced weaponry that included hypersonic missiles as well as one of their largest mobile launch ballistic missile named Hwasong-17. What many observers have not mentioned is the fact that some of the weapons that North Korea now possess, especially since the year 2020, are variants or replicas of Russian weaponry. For instance, it has been observed that the North Korean KN-23 short-range ballistic missile shares some features with Russia-produced Iskander-M and South Korean Hyunmoo-2B short-range ballistic missile, being distinguished by its elongated cable raceway, different jet vane actuators and smooth base. Like the Iskander-M, it flies in a quasi-ballistic trajectory, flattening out below an altitude of about 50 kilometers, 160,000 feet, where the atmosphere is dense enough so the missile's fins can change course along its flight path. The largest North Korean ballistic missile Hwasong-17 also seems to have been designed to mimic Russia-produced mobile launch ballistic missile named Topol-M. This is and other evidences points to the fact that North Korea has secretly been getting help from Russia to expand its arsenal of deadly weaponry despite numerous sanctions that have been imposed on it by the UN, the US and its allies. Both Iran and North Korea are seen as a threat to the United States' interests in the Middle East and Asia-Pacific respectively. The United States government under the presidency of George Bush Jr. even designated the two countries as part of what he termed as Axis of Evil. The bilateral relations between the People's Republic of China, PRC, and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK, have generally been quite friendly. This relationship is based on shared history, economic and ideological factors as mentioned earlier in this video. Both China and North Korea are communist or red states with authoritarian governments that also happen to be neighbors. North Korea and China, despite sanctions, have also been engaging in cross-border trade. For instance, China has been supplying North Korea with finished goods while North Korea has been supplying China with some raw materials for its industries. Furthermore, China and North Korea have a mutual aid and cooperation treaty, signed in 1961, which is currently the only defense treaty either country has with any nation. China and North Korea have, in the past, enjoyed close diplomatic relations. Both countries established diplomatic relations on the 6th of October 1949, 5 days after the declaration of the People's Republic of China, PRC. China has in the past demonstrated its commitment to the defense of national sovereignty of North Korea by sending its troops to aid North Korea during the Korean War. Relations have increasingly become cordial since 2018, with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un making multiple trips to Beijing to meet Chinese Communist Party General Secretary and President Xi Jinping, who himself visited Pyongyang in June 2019. Relations between China and North Korea began in the 1940s before the two even became formal states. After Second World War and after decades of Japanese occupation, the northern half of Korea was placed under Soviet administration. Then in September 1948, the DPRK, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, was officially established. The PRC, the People's Republic of China, was created a year later when the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, won the Chinese Civil War in October of 1949. The Chinese Civil War. During the Chinese Civil War, the CCP was struggling to make gains in South Manchuria. Due to North Korea's proximity to South Manchuria, the CCP lent on the DPRK for support. The People's Republic of China and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea exchanged diplomatic recognition on October 6, 1949, with the PRC recognizing the DPRK as the sole legitimate authority of Korea. During the Korean War that began in 1950 and ended in 1953, China and North Korea joined forces against the United States and its allies. China indeed played a major role in determining the outcome of the Korean War. Without the support of China, North Korea could have lost huge parts of its territory. As gesture of gratitude, North Korea has returned favor to China. For instance, it has openly voiced support for China in its territorial claims over Taiwan. It is also possible that North Korea could join forces with China in any future war with Taiwan, especially if United States and other allies like Japan were to take part in the conflict. Russia, North Korea, and China are collectively viewed as adversarial or hostile enemy nations by Japan, the United States, Australia, and other Asian countries. It is also well known that most, if not all, Navy activities in the Asia-Pacific region that are routinely carried out by the United States and its allies are predominantly aimed at countering what has been claimed to be the growing threat of China. Tensions between North and South Korea have also been mounting in recent years. Given that the United States is a key ally of South Korea, where the United States also has military bases, it may be forced to intervene to defend South Korea in the event of a war between the two Koreas, just like it has done in the past. War between the two Koreas has the potential of becoming a regional or even global war, given that key allies of North Korea like China and Russia may also become involved. Just to reiterate, China and North Korea have a mutual defense pact that has existed for decades now. In the far east of Russia, there is a territorial dispute between Russia and Japan over the Kuril Islands, which Russia is currently occupying after it seized them in 1945. Because of this unresolved dispute with Japan, Russia has always been in a state of war readiness in the Far East to counter any possible surprise attacks that could be mounted by both the United States and Japan, considering the fact that the United States has a large naval base in Okinawa, Japan. In conclusion, it can be argued that, in the event of any major future wars involving Iran, North Korea, China, and Russia, the four nations may join up together militarily to counter threats against any of the aforementioned states that constituting this informal alliance. In Syria, for instance, Iran and Russia have partnered since 2015 to fight against armed rebels that fought a very fierce battle targeted at toppling President Bashar al-Assad. President Assad has remained a key ally of both Iran and Russia. North Korea and Iran are also currently involved in the ongoing war in Ukraine by supplying arms to Russia. According to various media reports in the West, China was the first country to give President Vladimir Putin assurances of full support just before Russia invaded Ukraine, when President Putin visited China to attend the opening ceremony of the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics. It can therefore not be ruled out that China has secretly been channeling crucial aid to Russia via other countries, for instance, through its trusted allies like Iran and North Korea. China, being a global economic powerhouse that trades with all nations including Western nations, has so far refrained from providing direct military support to Russia. This is mainly because China does not want to risk serious damages to its economic interests, mainly its commercial activities with Western countries. Just to reiterate, China does not want to be viewed as helping Russia in its war against Ukraine, for instance. It does not want to be seen as sending weapons to Russia. This is because China finds itself in a rather awkward position in which it must strike a balance between its security and economic interests. Just to reiterate, the existence of the undeclared alliance between Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran has the potential of escalating future regional conflicts involving any of the four countries into major global war in which the use of nuclear weapons cannot be ruled out. It is worth pointing that presently three members of this alliance, namely Russia, China, and North Korea, are in possession of nuclear weapons as well as effective delivery systems with global reach. It is also possible that even Iran has secretly been able to acquire ready-to-use nuclear weapons, possibly through its nuclear program or with the help of its close allies like North Korea and Russia. Like was mentioned earlier, it cannot be ruled out that Russia and North Korea would not join China in a potential war with Taiwan if the United States and Japan were to also get involved in such a conflict to defend Taiwan. As a matter of fact, Russia has already expressed its support to China over its claim on Taiwan. For instance, in June 2023, China and Russia conducted joint naval patrols near the east coast of Taiwan, a move that was seen as a demonstration of Russia's commitment to militarily support China in a potential conflict with Taiwan, especially if other powerful nations like the United States, Australia, Japan, or South Korea decided to join the conflict. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like and share this video. Also watch another video on this channel discussing why war with Iran is such a bad idea for the United States, NATO allies, and Israel. The link to the video is in the description below.